What if I told you that one of the world's most dangerous conflicts, a flashpoint that has pushed nuclear powers to the brink, all started with a receipt? It sounds impossible, doesn't it? But in 1846, the British Empire sold the entirety of Kashmir, its mountains, its rivers, and most importantly, its people, to a local ruler for 7.5 million rupees. This is the story of that sale, and how it lit a fire that, nearly 175 years later, refuses to go out. So, how exactly do you sell an entire kingdom? To understand that, you have to picture the world in 1846. The Indian subcontinent was a chaotic, high-stakes chessboard. The old Mughal Empire was gone. In its place were ambitious local rulers and the unstoppable British East India Company. In the northwest, you had the powerful Sikh Empire, a major force in the Punjab region. But after the death of its great leader, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the empire began to crack from the inside. And watching it all were two global superpowers. In the south, the British East India Company was quickly shifting from a business to a colonial empire. And from the north, the Russian Empire was creeping south across Central Asia. This shadowy contest for influence became known as the Great Game. For Britain, controlling the mountains of northern India was everything. These territories were the buffer, the great wall that would keep Russia away from the jewel in the crown of its empire, India. The chaos in the Sikh Empire was the opening Britain was waiting for. After a series of clashes, the First Anglo-Sikh War broke out. The British, with better discipline and modern weapons, won a decisive victory in 1846. The defeated Sikhs were forced to pay a crushing war indemnity, but their treasury was empty, so Britain made them an offer they couldn't refuse. Instead of cash, they would take the land, specifically the vast, beautiful, and strategic Kashmir Valley. Just like that, Britain owned Kashmir, but they didn't want to actually rule it directly. It was too remote and too difficult to manage. Their goal was simple: create a loyal buffer state. They needed a buyer, and they knew exactly who to call. Enter Gulab Singh, a clever and ambitious Dogra Rajput chieftain from Jammu, who had technically been a vassal of the Sikh Empire. But during the war, he played a masterful game of diplomacy, staying neutral and making himself useful to the British. His so-called neutrality was a calculated gamble that paid off, earning him Britain's favor. Just 1 week after acquiring Kashmir, the British sealed a deal with him. On March 16, 1846, they signed the Treaty of Amritsar. The terms were brutally simple. The British government made over forever in independent possession to Maharaja Gulab Singh all the mountainous country it had just taken. This land, including the Kashmir Valley, would become the new princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. And the price for this new kingdom? 7.5 million rupees, specifically the rupees of the former Sikh treasury. To add a symbolic flourish of who was really in charge, Gulab Singh also had to present the British with an annual tribute: 1 horse, 12 prized shawl goats, and 3 pairs of luxurious Kashmiri shawls. Let's not mince words here. This was not a treaty between equals. It was a transaction. The British just sold a piece of land they had just acquired and its millions of inhabitants as if it were just a piece of property. The people of Kashmir, who were overwhelmingly Muslim, were never asked. They had zero say in their own fate. Overnight, they were sold to a new Hindu ruler from a different region, whose power would be guaranteed by the British military. One of the most beautiful and strategic places on this earth was treated like a cynical asset flip in a brutal game of empire. The deal was done. The receipt was signed and the fuse was lit. The creation of the state of Jammu and Kashmir was a disaster waiting to happen. It established an autocratic Dogra Dynasty to rule over a population that had little in common with its new masters. The divide was immediate and stark. The rulers were Hindu, while the majority of the most populous region, the Kashmir Valley, was Muslim. For the next century, the Dogra regime's rule was often oppressive. For many Kashmiris, it felt less like a government and more like an occupation. Crushing taxes were placed on the majority Muslim population. Taxes on everything from homes and fruit trees to even the local gravedigger. Muslim peasants were often pushed off their land, effectively becoming tenant farmers on property their families once owned. Forced unpaid labor, known as begar, was widespread. The administration often favored the state's Hindu minority, creating a system that enriched the ruling class and left the majority of people poor and without political power. Any attempt at political protest was met with force. This century of discrimination created a deep and lasting bitterness. It wasn't just about economic hardship. It was a profound sense of injustice. The people of Kashmir felt that they had been sold into servitude, their rights and identity ignored by both the British and the Dogra rulers. This anger lasted for decades, a pressure cooker just waiting for a moment of crisis. That moment came in 1947, when the British Empire, the very power that created this artificial state, announced it was leaving India for good. The year 1947 brought the partition of British India into two new nations, the secular Hindu-majority state of India and the Muslim state of Pakistan. The 560-plus princely states were given a choice: join India, join Pakistan, or theoretically become independent. For Maharaja Gulab Singh's great-grandson, this was an impossible choice. His state had a Muslim majority, which suggested joining Pakistan. But as a Hindu ruler, he was afraid of giving up his power. Joining a democratic India was also a bad option, as it meant losing his absolute monarchy. So Hari Singh stalled, dreaming of an independent Kashmir. But his kingdom was already on fire. Decades of resentment had finally boiled over. An uprising against his rule erupted in the Poonch region. Seeing the chaos, Pakistan made its move. In October 1947, thousands of Pashtun tribesmen, supported by the Pakistani state, invaded Kashmir to seize it by force. They advanced quickly, closing in on the capital, Srinagar. With his kingdom collapsing, a desperate Hari Singh turned to India for military help. India agreed, but on one critical condition: Kashmir had to formally accede to India. On October 26, 1947, Maharaja Hari Singh signed the Instrument of Accession. The very next day, Indian troops were airlifted to Srinagar to fight back the invaders. Pakistan immediately contested the accession, arguing it was forced upon the Maharaja against the will of the people. The tribal invasion turned into the first full-scale war between India and Pakistan. The explosion that was primed a century earlier had finally happened. The war wasn't the start of the Kashmir conflict, it was the inevitable, violent result of a business deal made in 1846. The first Indo-Pakistani War ended in 1949 with a UN-brokered ceasefire. The ceasefire line sliced right through Jammu and Kashmir, leaving roughly two-thirds under Indian control and the rest under Pakistani control. This temporary line, later renamed the Line of Control, became the de facto border. Today, it's a heavily militarized, fiercely contested frontier that has been the flashpoint for two more major wars and countless smaller fights. At the time, India's leaders had proposed that the accession could be finalized by a plebiscite, a popular vote for the people of Kashmir to decide their own fate. That vote never happened. The reasons why are complex and fiercely debated to this day, but the result was that the temporary division became permanent, cementing a conflict that has defined South Asian politics for over 75 years. The story of Kashmir is a stark reminder of how a single decision, made by a distant power looking out for its own interests, can create generations of tragedy. If you found this story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more deep dives into the history behind today's headlines. What happened in 1846 was more than a real estate deal. It was the sale of a people's future. The wars, the insurgency, the nuclear brinkmanship, and the immense human suffering that define Kashmir today all can be traced back to that one cynical document, the Treaty of Amritsar. The British didn't just sell a kingdom, they sold the future peace of a subcontinent, and it's a price that's still being paid in blood and tears.